So I'll go here with us now is Edwin Lacierda, who used to be spokesperson for President Noynoy Aquino and was here just last Friday. We were just talking about Edwin last Friday on news.ph. Itong kailangang boto ni BBM and how he would reach that. And now,
well, so he's breached the 39% already.
39% of the
39% of 100%. Yung 65,721,230 votes, no?
registered voters.
Registered vote. That's the domestic. Because if you add the overseas and the absentee, that's about 1.8. So, but they're not counted yata now. So we're only looking at the domestic registered votes. So yung boto lang dito sa loob ng Pilipinas.
Yeah. Okay. So why is 25 million the threshold, yung kinahanap natin boto? Explain that again.
Kasi yung traditionally, to become president, except for FVR and Pinoy, all three era, GMA and President Duterte garnered 39% of the votes. So ngayon, si BBM lumampas na. He's already at, based on your accounts kanina, yung number niya 26,313,000, he's already at 40.04%. By the way, the total number of votes counted already is at 67.55%. So you're only looking at 32.45% na lang of votes to be counted. And right now, si BBM is already at 26.313. Lampas na yun ng 40%. We're now looking for the next 9%. Kasi 40.04% siya. So you're looking at 9.96%.
Yeah. Earlier, last night, around 8, 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10, ang sinasabi ng mga Lenny supporters, baka pwede pang humabol, di ba? But at a certain point, at what point did it become an insurmountable lead?
When it hit somewhere around 21, medyo mahirap na because the numbers of VP Lenny was stagnant. Medyo stagnant siya. So right now, she's at 12.554 million. That's only 19.10%. So you've got 40.04 against 19.10%. So that's a huge. And by the way, that's consistent with unfortunately, with the pulse, with the surveys.
With the surveys.
We're looking
Even
at
Okta,
we're looking at 56%. In the Pulse Asia, it was 56.24. So they both are not there yet, but it seems like, is there a possibility for Bongbong to become, for the first time, a majority president? It looks that way, considering that you have 32% votes yet to be counted. Yung ER na binibilang, yung 81.80%, those are the number of ERs transmitted. But the total number of votes counted already is around 67.62. So you're looking at 32% more votes to be counted pa. So malaki yun.
Yeah, okay. The other number we're looking at is, kasi kung 12.5 million si Lenny ngayon, 14.4 million siya noong 2016. No?
Yes,
so,
kulang pa.
Yeah, so everybody's expecting na kailangan, kung matalo man, kailangan malampasan niya or maabutan niya yung 14.4, 12.5.
Well, it's possible. That's only about, if it's 14 million, that's about 1.400. 1.400 million na lang ang kailangan.
Okay.
1.4 million na lang kailangan ng boto.
Yeah, but it doesn't really matter now, right?
It doesn't matter, in the sense only of making sure that she maintained her lead, the same lead that the same number of votes she had in 2016.
Okay, so let's look back and look forward. So the look back question is, what went wrong in the campaign? No? Because people say the rallies were great, they were happy, big, funny, nice, everything you wanted in a rally was there. They had their house to house, and then although they wouldn't believe in surveys, and then say, may Google Trends naman, etc., diba? And then they had all these big endorsements.
Right.
No? Hindi lang celebrity, no? Kung ano-ano. Dami. So, yun yung look back, what went wrong, looking forward, what next? No? What's gonna happen now?
Conventionally, and I'm saying this objectively, I think the decision to declare and to run late was a big factor. Now, there's a difference between Lenny deciding late in 2015. Because at that point, she was an administration candidate. The whole machinery of the LP and the administration was with us, was with Mar and was with Lenny. And so, and being the vice presidential candidate, dala siya ng presidential candidate. So, that was fairly simple. So, may administration candidate ka. Kahit na late ka mag-decide, meron ka ng makinarya. Dito talagang, and to credit her, she really didn't want to run. From the very start naman, when I spoke to her in July, sabi niya, Sek, ayaw kong tumakbo.
She was supposed to run for governor, right?
Well, that's one of her
the
plans, yes.
options.
But in fact, that was the reason why she was talking to Isko Ping Manny Pacquiao to try to find a common candidate for the opposition. At some point, maybe perhaps there was the call for her to run, then maybe she decided to run. But because of the factor that you don't have a machinery behind you, the idea of running late became such a difficult, there were no logistics. You don't have political endorsements on the outset. A lot of your political allies had to leave because kailangan namin we need to make a decision. Ma'am, tatakbo ba kayo? Hindi. Because we need also cover for ourselves. And so a number of politicians identified with the LP decided to run and look for separate candidates. So, isa na yan. And so, in spite of the fact na talagang volunteer-driven, wala kang makinarya to start. So that's why it was really hard. Mahirap talaga. Kumbaga, wala kang logistics. Di ba? From the very start, it's like, di ba, amateur stock strategy, professional stock logistics. Wala kang logistics eh.
Yeah, okay.
Di ba? Ang hirap.
Oh. But then, like you mentioned, volunteers, so you have those rallies, no? You had Pasig with a certain number of people attending. You had Pasay, 400 plus thousand attending. You had Makati last, what day was that? Saturday.
Last Saturday.
750,000. According to the estimates.
But that came late na.
Late na.
That came late. The first one who really...
Pero gang-ho kasi yung mga supporters niya eh.
Kung
diba?
passion kasi ang metric, panalo talaga.
Okay.
Diba? No doubt. I was saying, kung passion ang metric, panalo talaga. Except the reality of a campaign is, it has to be disciplined, it has to be structured to a large extent. The volunteers were very good. I mean, credit should be given to the volunteers. They put up a strong campaign. I mean, so creative, so free, so giving of themselves, both in time and in resources.
Yeah. Edwin, clarify that and make that very clear. Disciplined and structured in the truest, most traditional sense of a campaign, meaning messaging, the way you attack certain things.
There are certain things that the messaging came on. In fact, the tagline, which is beautiful, Gobyernong Tapat, came quite late. Came only in January. So you've got 3 months of people were coming up with their own, di ba? Although there was already a brand decision, ganito ang magiging kulay, ganito ang font and all that. But the whole idea, ano bang mensahe natin? In fact, if you're part of that echo chamber, you would see people saying, ano bang mensahe natin? Di ba? So, and then you've got a number of parang there was really, because everybody was giving of themselves, if I thought of something beautiful, and which is beautiful, sige, takbo natin. So, kanya-kanya lahat. So, I suppose yung message nga, hindi klaro kung ano talaga ang mensahe. Ang klaro was what Vice President said, radical love. To really talk about, let's try to convert without pulling teeth with the supporters of my other...
But radical love, was that something the ordinary Pinoys could understand? Di ba? And radical love, talking, convincing, was that what happened? Or was it the opposite?
It was very difficult. I mean, I spoke to someone who said that 6 na taon kaming hindi makasalita. Because of the Duterte, because they were being bashed by, di ba, we were called Dilawan trolls, yung mga Dilawan and all that. So, parang there was a climate of fear under Digong. And then suddenly, when it's time for change, ayan na, tatakbo na. I can be free to talk na. And then the vice president said, and this is by the way, this is not a mistake I fully agree with the concept of radical love because it's really hard to it's pulling teeth when you're talking to Marcos supporters. That's why it has to be a positive messaging and without engaging them in a very confrontational way. But it's a challenge, like you said.
Yeah.
Hindi kasi natural sa atin, although Kristiyano tayong pinalaki, syempre pag makulit yung kakausap mo, sometimes it gets to...
Oh, yung latest boto ni BBM, 25 million, that means something. That has to be acknowledged.
Yes.
Yung mga Lenny supporters cannot say, oh, wala yan. Hindi.
No.
Ang hirap di ba? It has to be...
Mandato yan eh.
Right.
Mandato yan ni Bongbong. I mean, the people chose his message. I believe that the message of VP Lenny was very substantive. But what can you do? The people chose unity. The thing that I was telling, one of the things that I think what got and convinced the people by and large is the idea of, because if you're attending the FGD, a focus group discussions, and we did a number of focus group discussions, there were two things talaga na sinasabi. Pagod na kami sa bangayan. Because of the COVID pandemic, pagod na. People are tired. Ayaw namin nag-aaway yung mga ang liderato. Gusto namin magbuklod-buklod. I remember that very, very clearly. And it was an FGD that was common to all respondent groups of Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And that was very strong. And that was talking about unity.
That was one. The other one was?
I forgot.
Okay,
no. But the other one was in relation to I forgot what I was going to say. I'll try to recall it. But the message of unity was very, very strong. Oh, the other one is this. Saan mo kami dadalhin?
Right.
Kasi ang problema there's a fine distinction between doing a presidential campaign and a senatorial campaign in the Philippine setting. In the US, a presidential campaign can focus on jobs, whatever the economy, whatever the issues, kitchen table issues, that so to speak. Here in the Philippines, it's more aspirational. Ang tanong nila, saan mo kami dadalhin? Where are you going to lead us?
Yeah.
So that must be clear. For one reason or another, the people believe in the pinwheel of Bongbong Marcos. Look at that song, Umagang Kay Ganda.
Yeah.
It's very visually entertaining,
Well,
visually
also maybe
moving.
because it was just very simple.
That's correct.
Straightforward.
It's a very simple thing. I mean, it goes into ayaw namin nag-aaway, nagbabangayan ng aming mga liderato. Although, sila rin naman ang babanat eh. Pero yung kandidato mismo, look the entire campaign, what was the excuse of not joining the debate? Kasi it's an opportunity to bash. And ayaw namin mag-bash ng kalaban.
Okay. Edwin, stand by lang because let's hear the studio. Edwin, kanina yung tinatanong ko, yung moving forward, what's going to happen next? How should Lenny maneuver through this?
Well, she's no longer going to be a public official, but she will have this whole new pink movement where passions are strong, where the call to accountability has been fired up. No? So, sana wag lang pang-election lang yung passion na yan. And if Lenny decides to take the lead, I'm sure the people will follow her. But it will be a civil society movement because obviously she's not in government. And now, however, the question comes in, is she willing to accept the reins of leadership at that point? Because, di ba sabi niya, after this, ayaw na niya. Di ba? Kasi she was forced to running for congresswoman, vice president, and now president. So she'd like time for her. In fact, she's leaving the country nga, di ba?
Yeah.
So, but I think there will be, again, the sense of duty for her would be strong. Because when I spoke to her in July, she didn't want to run talaga, but she felt the compelling sense of duty. But that's why we had to convince her, ma'am, tumakbo kayo. But I think at this point, she would not want to waste the passion for good governance among the people that have been inspired by her running for president. In that alone, if she's able to take on the reins, then that would be something victorious also for her. That can continue and maybe a foil to the present administration.
But what form will this passion take? I'm trying to figure out how to ask that question now. But kasi, are they going to will Lenny supporters try to block BBM or try to prevent a proclamation, or how far will this go? What
It depends
do we
on the
see?
concession speech of, if you're saying that she's going to do a concession speech, it would depend on the tenor of her speech. If it's a friendly concession speech, or a rather a more realistic concession speech where I will continue to fight for what I believe is right, but acknowledging that you are now the legitimately elected.
With so far 26 million votes.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's why. So I think. Well, I think that would depend on the tenor of the concession speech of Vice President Lenny. That and the people will follow whatever she says, because they're still very inspired.
Yeah, but I mean the Lenny campaign volunteers also really felt like she could win this, right? But at a certain point, you knew that this wasn't going to happen.
Well, because a lot of people were convinced that the Google Trends can help, because we've traditionally relied on surveys, and when the surveys weren't registering the kind of numbers that we wanted to, somebody just came up and said, "Hey, look, there's this news, there's a new way of predicting elections. It's called Google Trends, and in so many countries, it has been proven to be right." So,
well, now it's proven to be wrong.
It's proven to be wrong in our country.
In our country, in the Philippines,
diba?
yeah.
So that's why it really, and people were just so fired up. People were just so inspired. So that's there will be days of grief. Obviously, the 5 stages of grief will happen, but at some point you have to turn positive. How do we harness this whole energy?
Right.
And that would, I think, VP Lenny would be very, very conscious of that responsibility. And we hope that she will continue on, but give her time to rest first and all that.
Well, speaking of those stages of grief, no, what stage ba is denial? Di ba may denial pa eh?
Yeah, tek mo na. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yung ano yan there's denial, the first stage is denial, then anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance.
Okay, nasang stage? Wala pa sa una.
Depende sa level mo eh. But definitely ngayon, it's really painful yan, di ba?
Yeah.
Masakit kasi, imagine people, the people were going to all their rallies. And I saw, for instance, people going to BGC, going to Rockwell, and then just
all those parang flash mob,
Yes.
yung biglang nagko-congregate, no? But, yun nga, sinasabi ko kanina, parang ang gaganda ng mga rallies. Makati was, wow, what? 750K, di ba? But then that wasn't enough, di ba? And if you look at the NCR numbers,
there was one particular rally that I had to talk to one congressman. Sabi ko, he asked, how do we improve the message? Sabi ko, alam mo yung rally nyo, hindi lang pang show of force yan.
Right.
Yung rally ni Lenny. Kasi those are opportunities for conversion. Pero, 4 na oras ang rally mo, nasa pinakadulo si Lenny. But in the meantime, yung mga host mo, panay ang banat sa mga supporters or kay Bombo or sa mga supporters. Politics is addition, we need to convert. Pero kung merong mag-attend, tapos marinig na binabanatan, gaganahan ba silang tapusin yung buong rally? Sa last part, yun ang magandang sinasabi ni Lenny. So I was telling them, stop bashing in the rallies. It doesn't make sense for you. It's popular with your supporters, but this is not a church choir. Hindi pa tapos ang laban. So hindi itong rally para sa mga kumbinsido, para ito sa mga
hindi pa kumbinsido.
Hindi pa kumbinsido. Yan ang kailangan natin to have in mind. So that's why. And also I told them, let's use unity. Maganda yung talaga naman, hindi lang naman yan teritoryo ni Bongbong. He doesn't have the monopoly on unity.
Yeah.
All of us want and yearn for unity.
Oh, so unity, and that's why yung rosas hindi lang pink, naging multicolored na.
I think yan yung effect nung binanata that came after the Easter Sunday. I think that unity color came after the Easter Sunday conference of press con of the sila Isko. But from the very outset, the Vice President really wanted unity. But syempre, it was hard to settle on who's going to be the opposition candidate. The irony of it all was, yung kabilang team pa ang nagkaroon ng unity. Imagine mo, GMA convincing Sara and Bongbong to unite. Convincing Sara, avoiding the same mistake that Imelda and Danding did in 1992. Because otherwise, had Danding not run for the presidency, you could have as early as 1992 a Marcos president in the person of Imelda. But those two guys ran, eating up the same base. Here, you also have the same base. The Marcos base and the Duterte base were the same, practically the same characteristics. Yun. They learned from the lessons of history and decided not to run against each other.
Well, speaking of, we're going to get some final words now from Edwin Lacierda.
Well, I think we're looking at inevitably looking at a Marcos presidency.
And you never thought you'd say that, right?
Hoping that I would never say that. But I think we should hold him to his promise of unity. And to make sure that we don't, and make sure that history does not repeat itself as what happened to his father. I hope he'll be a better president. I hope he will be friendly to, he will truly unite the country as he's promised campaign for the last so many months. And the only leg that only foundation he stood on was unity. So I think it's pretty easy for us that we should be able to hold him to that. And if he does not, there's always the pink movement. There's always those people who have promised to speak truth to power, like media, whose responsibility is to always speak truth to power. So we hope that he will, and I hope he will be able to convince the international community that he's not his father. That's it.
Now, before we go, we have figures as of 12:32 a.m. Let's bring them up now. 12:32 a.m. This is okay. 12:32 a.m. BBM 27,391,261 votes. Lenny Robredo 13,076,367 votes. Manny Pacquiao 2,913,672 votes. Isko Moreno 1,697,954 votes, and Ping Lacson 803,305. They're followed by Mangundato, Abelia, De Guzman, Gonzales, and Montemayor. In the VP race, still the same, Sara Duterte, number one, with 27,460,167 votes. Kiko Pangilinan, 8,186,781 votes. Tito Soto, 7,299,010 votes. Followed by Willie Ong, Lito Atienza, Manny Lopez, Walden Bello, Carlos Serapio, Lito David. The senatorial race, partial unofficial tally, COMELEC Transparency Server as of 12:32 a.m. Number one pa rin si Robin Padilla, 22.9 million votes. Number two, Lauren Legarda, 21.3 million votes. Raffy Tulfo, number three, 20.5 million votes. Followed by Win Gatchalian, Cheese Escudero, Mark Villar, Alan Cayetano, Mig Zubiri, Joel Villanueva, JV Ejercito Estrada, Risa Ontiveros, and Jingoy Estrada. That rounds out the top 12. Number 13, Jojo Binay. 14, Herbert Bautista. 15, Gibo Teodoro. Followed by Gilor Eleazar, Harry Roque, Greg Onasan, Chel Diokno, and Larry Gadon. So I want to say first, thank you to Edwin Lacierda. Yes, yes.
Just
go.
Your last count on the presidential numbers, we still have around 19.455 million votes to look for.
Okay.
So that's still big. So it depends. You're only at 70.52% of total votes counted.
Yeah, and you're hoping that.
No, we'll see if we can. If Lenny can narrow the gap, or Marcos will just continue to run away.
Okay.
So,
yeah, and then 13 million pa rin si Lenny, and then di ba we're looking at
she's now at
14.4.
19.90%. So tama, 13.076, so about 924 million thousand before she hits 14 million. So out of 19 million, siguro makakahanap ka ng 900,000 votes to make it to 14, or mas tataas pa yan.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us, Edwin.
Thank you also.
Edwin Lacierda, political analyst now before presidential spokesperson. Maraming salamat, and thank you for joining